This is a very important journey, not just for me, but for all of us here present today, because it is about the state of our country and the welfare of our people. Our beloved Gambia is at a serious crossroads. The country is regressing and our people are suffering. Cost of living is skyrocketing, and there are no effective mechanisms in place to prevent unreasonable price hikes. The ordinary people are at the mercy of predatory businesses whose primary concerns or objectives are just profits. A friend once told me that in the Gambia, in several homes, people can't afford to eat meat. They do so only twice in the year, Tobaski and Korite, and maybe occasionally when there is a naming ceremony in between. That's a very sad situation. It pains me. Salaries here are exceedingly low because they are unregulated and there is no minimum wage. The average salary is far outstripped by the cost of living. In effect, workers are not generally afforded a decent standard of living. In fact, a lot of them are deprived of dignity. I say this because I have come across people who, even though they are working, they would go and beg in order to supplement what they earn. Another dismal situation. This is a country where laborers and housekeepers earn more than clerks, earn more than civil servants, and sometimes they even earn more than police and other security officers. That is shocking. And I also do understand that in some instances, they even earn higher than graduates. Due to the low wages and poor conditions of employment, corruption has been on the rampage in the country. Recently, people have seen the report that was produced about corruption in the country. And it is said that there is more corruption now than there was 6 years ago. A woman came to my house one day to complain about the situation, and she told me previously one person would do the eating, but now too many people are doing the eating, and therefore corruption continues to fester, whereas the ordinary people continue to suffer. And with this, every day, people continue to die in the hospitals because of lack of basic facilities. I can relate to that. My father, who I loved so dearly, passed away last year in circumstances that could have been avoidable. He was taken to Serekunda Hospital very early in the morning at around Fajr prayers. He was there. Apparently, his blood sugar level had gone up. And the doctors were trying to stabilize him. Sometime around the evening, a Gambian doctor who was married to a former classmate and brother of mine, called me and spoke to me privately. And she said to me, "Mr. Faal, you must do something for your father. If you don't take him from here, he would die unnecessarily." I looked at her and I said, "But why?" She said to me, "He is now showing symptoms that he would have or he would lapse into diabetic coma. And if he is not put in intensive care, you would lose him. He should have been in intensive care since the morning." So I asked her, "Why? We've been here all day. Why didn't you put the old man in intensive care?" She said, "Because we don't have one." I was shocked. A whole hospital. A whole hospital, Serekunda Hospital, did not have intensive care unit that could have saved my father. We made arrangements to take him to a hospital that had intensive care unit. And it was suggested that I take him to a private hospital. When I called that private hospital, the first thing they told me was, "Can you afford it? It's very expensive." I thought that our primary occupation, our primary preoccupation would have been to think how to save a person's life. But here we were talking about dollars and cents and whether the family could afford it. So I said to the person on the other line, "Yes, fortunately we can afford it. Please make the intensive care unit available for him. We would bring him ASAP." Thank you. So we now had to plan to get an ambulance to take him to the hospital. That was a big challenge. After much running around, we were able to arrange for one of the spanking new ambulances waiting out there to take my dad to the hospital. But there was no driver, and the keys were not there. We had to start negotiating to get a driver, first to get the keys, and then to get a driver or the driver. Fortunately for us, we were able to reach the driver who was at home in Bakau, who was willing to come and drive the old man to the hospital. But he said he must take his shower and eat his dinner before he would come. So we had to wait. We had no choice. We had to wait. Well, he came, he arrived after about almost an hour and a half to 2. The old man was suffering. But then I realized that this was a COVID ambulance. And I asked the driver, say, "Look, my dad is almost 80, was around 80 at the time. He had pre-existing conditions. Would it be safe to put him in that ambulance?" The guy said, "Oh no, It's sterilized, it's sanitized, we've done all the cleaning, it's okay. I made him swear that it was okay. Not having a choice, we let the car in the van. Lo and behold, there was no air conditioning in that ambulance. I drove right behind them. By the time we arrived at the private hospital in Serekunda, which is really ordinarily 30 minutes away, but because of traffic, because there are no roads in this country, we couldn't get there until about after 1 hour, 1 hour 15 to 1 hour 30 minutes. By the time my dad was being removed from the ambulance, my brothers were frantically fanning him with their clothes. They were all bare-chested, fanning him with their clothes, because there was no air conditioning. He got into the hospital and they start doing resuscitation, CPR. Some hours later, my father passed away. It was an avoidable death. The medical or the healthcare situation in this country is a death trap. You go to this hospital with a headache, you come out in a stretcher. That's how bad it is. We are all victims. People are dying because there are no gloves. People are dying because there are no rudimentary facilities to carry out basic procedures to help them. I spent a lot of time in Dakar, and a lot of the times that I receive calls on Gambian numbers is because a Gambian has died in a hospital in Dakar and they needed help to repatriate the body. That is how bad it is. Growing up as a child, a lot of Senegalese used to come to the Gambia for medical treatment. Today, a lot of Gambians make the journey to Senegal for basic medical services. Another terrible situation. The quality of education in this country has deteriorated so badly. Most students in grade 10 and 12 fail their exams. The performance in English, maths, and the sciences is depressing. Many of the teachers are simply not qualified or not good enough for the job. The schools hardly have any facilities, let alone be labeled schools in the 21st century. To add insult to injury, the poor quality education is offered at very high costs. Even middle-class families would require help from abroad to be able to pay the school fees. Then you go to employment. Employment opportunities are extremely lacking. Young men and women complete their education at very high cost. They can't find jobs. Many of them resort to perilous journeys across the desert and the Mediterranean in order to find or look for greener pastures in Europe. In fact, they call it Barcelona or Barsaha. And you ask them why? Well, if they don't have anything to live for, they have everything to die for to get something beneficial. So they go on the back way. Why can't they make it here? Those who decide not to venture in this perilous journey, they seek other distractions in the country. I notice that quite a number of the young boys, they hold on to football. Football is the it nowadays. That is the hope. But how many of them can turn professional? Very few. But at least the hope would have been heightened if there were proper football pitches for them to practice and hone their skills. Unfortunately, the pitches that have grass in this country can be counted on one hand. One whole country, no football pitches for the sport that the youth hold dearly to. That is the outlet that gives them hope. But these facilities, basic as they are not available. I know that even in our homes, we do have gardens that are well manicured. A whole nation, we cannot have football pitches that are grassed for our youth and the young people to play on. Really shocking. But for those who cannot hold on to football, many of them take to drugs and alcohol. And it's very sad. If you want to find out, pass through Kololi Tavern. Your heart would bleed because of the number of young boys and young girls you would see hooked on cocaine, marijuana. Well, even that is mild and basic. I understand ecstasy is on the rampage in Gambia. Where is law enforcement? Where is drug enforcement? The other day, I learned that one kid was arrested somewhere around Kololi. 15 minutes later, he came back, and they asked him, "So nakalanak?" He says, dama len jox 5 aac rek ñu bàyyi ma ñoo ma wàccee si fii sax. That is how sad it is. We are losing our young people, a lot of them, to drugs and alcohol. The agricultural sector is not any better. It is on a significant decline. I recall very fondly when I was a child living in Sukuta, because we lived close to the market. My mother would occasionally take me with her in the evenings or sometimes early in the morning to go to the market to buy beautiful vegetables. Those glory days are gone. Even the Chinese are competing with the women in Gunjur for these little narcos to farm on them. Very shocking. And we are here applauding them. It is very painful. Not only have those vegetables disappeared, the fishes that we had in abundance are no longer to be seen. Growing up in Banjul, Kobo was died off. We bought them to what we call Safalchin. Now, Bonga or Kobo is unaffordable to many. A lot of our fishes are finding their way to China or neighboring countries, and we cannot police it or we cannot control it. and our people continue to suffer. The environment in a lot of these fishing towns and villages, like Gunjur and Sanyang, have been so badly desecrated by poor and ill-thought investments that do not benefit the Gambian people. They don't even benefit the people who live there. Another sad situation. But you know what? With the almost disappearance of our agriculture, the saying comes to mind that a country that cannot feed itself is doomed. And that is what is happening to us. Instead of growing our jahatus, we import them from Senegal. Instead of growing our supermes or our cabbages, we import them from Senegal. You know what that means? We're throwing away money that we could have saved. It is double losses because it could have been local production to be purchased by us, and the locals would earn money instead of exporting money away, that is throwing it in the bin. It's like paying rent. It's a terrible situation. An examination of every sector in the Gambia reveals a nightmare situation. Even the security situation in the country is now deteriorated badly. People are no longer safe in their homes. If you think you have so much money, you can hire a watchman and you'll be fine. Well, you'd be lucky if the watchman does not attack you and your family to take away what you have, because he too does not have food at home. That is the situation of this country. The truth is, mbir mi doxul. Kuwol mantama molbe batata. When COVID-19 broke out, I had the opportunity to travel through the country, the length and breadth of it. I went from Banjul to Buduk, from Katong to Koina, just to help my Gambian brothers and sisters. That journey changed me. The journey revealed to me what real Gambia is for the first time. I can tell you, it's in a very sorry state. It is a Gambia in which the government is not present in 90% of the country. Ask me why. You go to many places, there are no schools, no hospitals, no clinics, no social services. Hearing nothing, not even potable water. You know, I happen to have lots of contacts in the provinces. And many communities, when they call me, what they ask for is to help give a contribution for them to build a borehole. And I ask myself, why can't we have a government department that builds boreholes for communities that don't have them but need them? All it takes is to buy a vehicle that does it and buy the necessary materials that go with it. Where is the government? It is sad. I read a report that was published just a few days ago. 45% of the urban population do not drink good water. The NAWEC pipes are all infected. That is the sad situation. That is the story of this country. I recall in my journeys, I went to Birkama with this crew of committed young men and women. We drove all over the country trying to help. And we arrived at a house in Birkama, a home in Birkama. And the moment I entered in the compound, I saw that they had slaughtered a big rat. And it was placed prominently in the steps of the home with the kids around it. I was surprised when I first saw it. But when I came closer, I realized that it was slaughtered in the Islamic way. It meant, therefore, that these people actually caught the rat and went through the process of making it halal. But there was nothing to cook it with. When we provided them with the food aid that we were busy giving out all over the country, comprising of a bag of rice, cooking oil, tomato paste, onions, and what have you, the kids in that home went ecstatic. They were jumping and clapping. This is a rat they had killed. This is a very sorry situation. This is what you have in Gambia. It's a very sad situation.